Since you're in Portland, what's your stance on the drug decriminalization in Oregon? Rather than share my own thoughts, I'm going to point you to this piece. Measure 110 didn't fail, leadership did. You can find it on Sisters of the Road's website. Yes, it's written by my daughter. She works in homeless advocacy, and decriminalization is part of that work. So since she can speak authoritatively and has researched this issue thoroughly, I'm going to defer to her article here. So we as Oregonians voted in Measure 110 in 2020. It decriminalized drug possession for personal use. Fast forward 4 years, and now most Oregonians believe Measure 110 is a mistake. Why is that? Well, first, let's talk about how Measure 110 was supposed to work. It did not decriminalize all substance use or possession in all circumstances. Here's how it was supposed to work. This is what we voted in. When a person was found possessing a limited quantity of a controlled substance, they received a $100 fine. They were supposed to be given a 24-hour hotline number to call in order to set up social services screenings. When they completed the screening, they were supposed to receive mental health services and a letter confirming the screening was completed. Then they could bring that letter to court and have their fine waived. However, the state and the cops completely bungled the rollout, so Measure 110 has been a big mess. Measure 110 coincided with the uptick in the fentanyl crisis, and folks began to conflate those two issues. As the senior medical director of the Substance Use Disorder Services at Central City Concern explained, Measure 110 did not make public substance use legal. It decriminalized possession of small quantities. Public substance use has much more to do with how fentanyl has a short duration and how homeless folks have no ability to use in private. The goal of decriminalization was for users to get treatment rather than to be punished. Those are good goals. However, it doesn't work if you don't have the framework established and you don't have the funding for beds in detox. You cannot say we're decriminalizing with the hope of giving folks treatment instead of punishment if there are long wait lists for treatment and folks cannot access it. So we passed Measure 110, but government officials made no move to expand the number of treatment beds, thus creating a massive bottleneck. Okay, come back for part 2 where I talk about how the national news flipped out over the proposed plan in our county to hand out foil and clean straws to users, and more about decriminalization. What you've heard in the national news about Oregon's effort to decriminalize drugs is wrong, especially if you're watching conservative right-wing media. This is part 2 about Measure 110 and decriminalization in Oregon. I was asked about my personal opinion, but what I'm going to do here is continue to cite this thorough piece of journalism by my kid, B. Baker. You can find it on the Sisters of the Road website. Okay, last time I talked about how decriminalization was supposed to work. It was supposed to get folks into treatment instead of into prison. The intent was good, but the state never had any follow-through to plan an effective rollout. Welcome to politics in Oregon. Now let's talk about a story that made national news. Portland, Oregon is in Multnomah County, and our health department here planned a pilot program that would have distributed foil and clean straws to users. This immediately hit right-wing media that freaked out, as they are wont to do when there is any news story about Portland. The story was twisted, misrepresented. It made it sound like we were providing drugs to users for free. There was so much backlash from folks who don't even live in this state that the county health department chair, Jessica Vega-Peterson, shut down the program, effectively removing a harm reduction method. Just an FYI, doing that does not reduce drug use. It just makes it more dangerous. So the government failed to provide sufficient beds and treatment. The right-wing media sabotaged harm reduction methods. Now let's talk about what the cops did. $100 citation tickets for possession were supposed to have a phone number on it, where you called the phone number, followed the steps, and you could get your fine waived and get access to treatment. In many parts of the state, the cops had no number on the ticket. The cops did not properly inform folks of how they could get their fine waived, nor how to access treatment. There was no effort to educate cops about how Measure 110 was supposed to work. The Oregon Health Justice Recovery Alliance pleaded with Governor Kate Brown to implement effective strategies to improve the success of Measure 110. Pause to read them here. As you can guess, those strategies were not implemented. The reason Measure 110 is now so unpopular is not because decriminalization doesn't work. It's not because decriminalization is a bad thing. It's because government officials, at least in my personal opinion, on multiple levels seem determined to scuttle it from the get-go. We have a long history of this in Oregon. Elected officials don't really like the initiative process. And whatever measures we, the people, vote in, government officials find a way to tank the ones they don't like, or to rework them to suit their own ends and subvert the initial will of the people. So yeah, go read B's article to understand the facts around Measure 110. But as for my own personal opinion, and the opinions of most Oregonians, because we voted in Measure 110, we wanted decriminalization. We understood its value. The problem lies not in decriminalization. It lies once again with the ineptitude or malintent of government officials, of the cops, of the right-wing media. Measure 110 could be effective. if we would commit the resources, the planning, and the proper implementation and ongoing funding and support for decriminalization. And in the long run, it would save us money because more folks would get treatment and support and get clean, and fewer resources would need to be spent on the cops, the criminal justice system, and beds in prison.